Okay, can we have everybody's attention? These are 3 different models of solar cooking, and we could have brought many more. Unfortunately, some of our stuff is in storage right now, and we were not able to get to it with our schedule this week to get it to bring with us. We apologize for that. We could have brought a galvanized metal model, we could have brought a cardboard model, we could have brought a wood model. There's lots of materials that will work, okay? But the greatest variable is insulating that cavity and having a good lid to hold heat in, and then the mechanism of reflecting. Now this is not black inside other than the black on the bottom. This is a very large reflector surface, and it works well. What is the misfortune is I forgot to bring the lid for this. When I showed you the lid inside the acrylic and then the sheet of the polyester film, it's just a sheet of a polyester film that's taped to a metal frame, a metal wire, and two prongs go down here to keep it from swiveling, and then there's a little curved metal handle that goes here, and the polyester film goes a little beyond the wire and is slitted just to the wire with a little round hole, and then that polyester film folds against the edges of this reflector and does a really decent job of sealing that cavity to hold the heat in. So this is in design stages. John Roach, who I mentioned, helped us a lot with the sport. This is the model that he has been designing in his retirement. It's been slowed down because his wife has come down with Parkinson's, and he has spent a lot of time with her. And but we're hoping that this will be ready to come to market in reasonable time. I can't tell you what it will be, but
in the meantime, when they get back from their trip, we're gonna Martha goes over and helps him put these together, and we will get him to get one up here for you.
Yep, we'll do that.
They want people to use it and give feedback. So.
Sure.
Now, one of the first things we're going to do is I just have 4 pieces actually, this roof flashing, and I want you to take one and put white side up in your hand and the other black side up, and just hold it facing the sun and see what happens with it. We'll let you pass that around and enjoy that, okay?
Now, Mike, I saw you come out here and you moved this.
And hold it flat on your hand.
Okay. When you're...
Oh, on your hand. You gotta
Put it flat on your palm.
Okay, yeah.
set your
Yeah,
palm
so you're not
Yeah.
cradling it like this, but flat.
When you're doing this, is when you're cooking, when you're using the appliance, is it periodically you want to come out and redirect it to the sun, or do you just put it, again, you had said before about just facing south, letting the sun sweep, and then how critical is that?
Well, when if you're under the gun, like we want you guys to test all this soon, and some of these quantities are a little bigger. So
I'm standing by you so that you'll pick up, the mic will pick up some of your conversation.
okay, so once in a while it's not, you don't have to do that,
Okay.
but every so often it's a good idea to do that. And actually, the way I do it, it's an easy way. You just stand behind the cooker and there's the sun, and then usually I put it just a little bit more to the right, so that because the sun's moving that way.
That's where the sun will move to, so it's still going into everything, but then it's going to be able to go beyond it and still keep sun going in fully into it.
Is one of these more efficient than the others?
Good question.
Let's see. This one says that it's about 240 degrees in here. I'm going to kick this piece of wood around too. That one we don't have the lid on. This one is about 240 also. Now, for comparison purposes, this has 2 pots in it and more food volume, and it's up at 240. That has lesser food volume, and it's up at 240.
We know the owner of this, and he's a friend actually, and he really likes to focus on some higher temperatures. And we think maybe he does get them from time to time, but every time we compare, we're right in the same neighborhood. We don't focus so much on saying, you know, we can get to 350 or we can do this. What we do have is we have a hard-working, this is like a Volkswagen, or this is like a Energizer bunny that keeps on cooking. Okay, day in and day out. And because this is probably the best insulated cooker that we're aware of. And it's really, that's the key, is the insulation for our cooker. You can have bigger ones. You can have, there's another type of cooker. It's a parabolic cooker. It looks like a big TV dish. And they're, you know, 5-6 foot diameter and focuses on one tiny spot. You can cook one little pot and it'll go up to 500-600 degrees. In fact, it's been known once in a while if the people aren't tending it properly and all of a sudden the focal point is on, it's too close to the house, it's been known to
Burn a house down.
Start a fire anyway.
Or burn the clothes on the clothesline. That's particularly, there's two designs in parabolics. One's kind of more of an internal focus, and the pot is reseated within the dish. Those are much safer than the ones that have it hanging out here, which gets the hotter temperatures, but it's more dangerous because as the earth rotates, if that parabolic has been set at an inadvantageous angle for where the sun rotates to, then fires have resulted, which is unfortunate. Or trees catch on fire, you know.
This is a good cooker, and it's been around longer than most of the other ones. And we say this is a Cadillac cooker, and the price reflects that too.
This one has a shelf inside of it. You'll see it suspended on those two bolts. Oh, guess what? One side wasn't on the bolt. Yeah. So anyway, that's a leveler. And as you change the angle of the cooker, then it keeps the food level. If we propped ours up, especially when you're near equinox and the sun doesn't go as high in the sky, this is a 30-degree angle. So when the sun gets to around 60 degrees, it gets easier for the sun to come in and bounce off of the plastic as opposed to penetrate through. So then, on some days, we'll put something underneath ours also, like that, and let it just tip towards the sun more. So you can see this is up to good temperatures. And we'll come out again at 12:30 and just make a good quick check and see if the food's done, and then we'll eat. If it's not done, we'll wait until 1.
Are there primitive, what you would call primitive models of these? We have friends who were working in the refugee camps in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they were making, for the people there, the refugees, they said they were making solar ovens.
Was that Gordon and Grace Magny?
No,
Okay.
Stephen Rosemary Forsyth.
Okay.
I'm sure they knew the Magnies.
Probably.
Yeah, and they probably worked together. They probably were doing the in-the-ground model for starters.
Oh. Gordon was super.
Would it make a difference on something like this? I mean, today we've got a breeze, and you were saying earlier that if it's windy, you have the potential of the wind blowing away. If you could create a shelter that would block the wind, would there be a noticeable increase in the efficiency of
Yes,
the
there
cooker,
would.
even if it was just like 3 walls around, so that even though the wind was blowing around it, it would be a little bit
Yeah,
sheltered,
if
or
you-
wouldn't you really notice any difference?
So the sun's from this direction right now. If you could set up a V here and bounce the sun either side of it so the wind isn't going around the walls of the oven. If you feel the walls of the oven, you can feel the warmth.
Yeah.
You know, it's not much, but if it's 20 below 0 and the wind is blowing, that would be a
surely make a
huge,
huge difference. Then.
yeah.
Just trying to think of things that you could do to increase the efficiency of it if you were always using it in the same location.
Yep,
Great.
right.
That's a good point.
Your handbook mentioned altitude and the
Yes.
significance at that. At what point does altitude become a factor? We're at roughly 1,000 feet above sea level right here.
I don't know really where it becomes significant. You always talk about Denver being a mile high, and you got to compensate there where it becomes, I'm sure it's a very gradual thing as the elevation goes up. I don't know the answer to that.
Is this stainless steel issue?
No, these are aluminum. They are aluminum. This is an aluminum laminate.
The far one, is that aluminum too?
Yes, this is aluminum also.
I suppose that's just to keep the weight down, so they're lighter.
Yeah, and I
Or does aluminum?
don't know if aluminum polish is easier, if that's cheaper, I would guess. I don't know. Weight would certainly be a part of it, but
What cost?
I don't know if aluminum.
Stainless steel is very
Well,
expensive.
stainless steel would be a lot more expensive than the aluminum, the polished aluminum.
Yeah.
Yes,
How about aluminum foil?
aluminum foil works. We have some instructions if you want to build one out of cardboard. We have instructions in there that we brought along today that you can take, and you glue aluminum to the cardboard, aluminum foil.
Actually, what would work really good, I suppose, is that dryer vent tape. That's aluminum tape. It'll just stick right on, and you could just peel it.
Yeah,
and stick.
there are numbers of aluminum tapes, and the different adhesives used on the back side, the adhesive side, it depends upon what materials you're attaching it to.
Sure.
I'm not an expert on that. I just know that there's variations.
Probably gets so hot it'd melt right off.
Some would. Just like duct tape, it melts off so easily.
If you do a reflector, it's better to have a few gaps every so often so the wind can go channel in between. If it's solid, then you're more like a sailboat.
A little bit off of there.
Does it make a difference in terms of your aluminum siding, like how thick it needs to be? You know what works best as far as the thickness of that, or you know what I mean? Like, let's say, I suppose a cardboard. If you were coating a cardboard, that would be appropriate. Or it's just
It has a variance. You don't want it so thin that it's going to tear when a pot happens to rub against it, or when you drop a fork on it, it's going to be tearing it. But the thicker it gets, it has diminishing return for that thickness. I'm so sorry I forgot the lid for this. What John Roach has found is that this one parallels the performance of the sport. And basically, what he has found is that whatever the ambient temperature is, this is about 20 degrees warmer. I mean 200 degrees warmer or more. Okay?
But when the clouds come over, this one goes down quick.
Right. This one, the temperatures will drop off so much more quickly because there's no insulation other than the little bit of fluted plastic. And this has that 1 inch of closed cell foam, which insulates much more effectively.
So, help me with the physics and all, and the meteorological of this. So, are we dependent more on UV rays for this, which would be normally our heating rays? That's the rays that we get sunburns and feel the heat is the UV rays, as opposed, the ultraviolet rays, as opposed to just regular sunlight, and that's why you can get sunburn on a cloudy day. But you're saying that you really need a sunny day for these to function, and so I hope I'm not.
No?
I think and I don't know the answer to your question, but I do know that the clouds, there's a certain amount of reflection that goes on
Right.
when the sunlight hits the cloud.
Bounces back towards the
So
sun.
what we're trying to do is create a situation where there's just no bouncing. It all
Maximize.
goes into the pot.
Maximize UV.
Yes. Our original cookers that we used, whether it was tin foil or aluminum, the insides were silver, or shiny. And when we came across this flashing material, because we had to have a black bottom in order to create the heat, and it's like, well, it's already there for us. So we tried black all the way around on the inside, and we found no, the differences were so minute. We said, well, let's just use the black. And So
Yeah.
now when the sunlight hits even the wall, it's turning to heat right away, as opposed to hoping it hits the pot.
Do they make a black mirrored type surface so that you would replace that? But again,
No, the duller it is, the better it is. Because the duller it is, the more it's absorbing the
Sure,
sun,
sure.
converting the light ray to a heat ray.
Sure.
And I imagine the heat rays are UV rays. I'm not a physicist to know that distinction.
I didn't mean to put you on.
No, it's a
good
very
question.
it's a great question. If I knew the answer, I'd tell you. I just don't know the answer. The black wall versus the shiny walls. Dick Wareham had some students at the University of South Pretoria in South Africa do some tests on shiny walls versus black walls. And what he told us was that literally in some atmospheric conditions, the black would outperform the shiny. And in some other atmospheric conditions, the shiny would outperform the black. And it was so minuscule, they just called it a wash. So what we can tell you is that both works. Shiny works, black works, but you do need the black absorbing, and if you can have black under the pots, you know, helping to transfer more heat to the pot than the pot itself. Some people do cook with a clear lid on the pot, and that can work when your pot is black inside, because the walls that the sun shines on the inside of the cooker will, you know, warm and transfer the heat also. But in general, I believe that the black lids work better than the clear lids. But you can use clear lids. Don't assume that you can't. If you're cooking white rice, your clear lid is going to be less effective than a black one, because a white rice is going to be reflecting sun out of the pot as opposed to absorbing it.
We've been
You
thinking
tried
for
vanilla
soups
rice?
and whatnot. We haven't gotten this quite far yet, but if you think about a cake, an angel food cake, the centerpiece that comes up, if we could somehow weld that to the lid and conduct heat down through that, we would now be in the center, providing heat as well as the outside.
As well as the
I
exterior.
think that might be an
That would
interesting-
heat water a lot
It's
faster.
almost an inverted angel food.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
If we were
you guys
gonna,
wanna invent that, go ahead.
if we were gonna,
Yeah.
if we were gonna design a pot for the solar oven, we would have the two lid options: a standard lid and an inverted cone lid. Okay, I think we should go back in. We know they're at good temperatures. We're just not even gonna bother to open. We know that we have a lot of chicken in there, big chicken pieces, and we're gonna just let them cook and do their thing.
How hot is it?
This is a sample of the insulation. I mentioned that. And these are a couple samples of the polyester film. Looks kind of flimsy, doesn't it? But I can promise you, if you spent your whole day trying to tear this, which go ahead and see if you can tear it, you can't tear it. If you cut a hole through it with your teeth, you could tear it. But puncture it with a toothpick or a fork or a knife, or take your lid and put your lid down on the ground like this. That is a no-no, because there are things like pebbles that will have sharp edges. There are things like sandburrs that have sharp edges, and you can puncture a hole, and as soon as pressure gets on wherever there's a hole, then it will tear. Okay? But you can try all day long to try and tear that stuff, and you can't tear it. It is amazingly tough. So when we take lids off of the solar oven, we always put the lids like this on the back side, or like this. And you do not have to take the reflectors off to take your lid off. You just put the reflectors on to set up, and when you want to put it away, if you want the reflectors collapsed, then you collapse the reflectors.
The reflectors are optional, but we went the first number of years without reflectors.
Right. Yeah, we never sold solar ovens with reflectors for the first 3 years we made them.
Are you ready to taste some chicken that was cooked by the sunshine? Oh, good. That's great. We're glad you are ready for that. We are too. Any other questions? I'm not going to address the seasoning question that Mark brought up until Mark is back. Who else has a question? Yes.
Are your kettles much easier to clean after you've been cooking solar?
I'm going to let Mike answer that for you.
You know, compared to frying on a burner or something, yes.
I bet they are.
You
That's
know,
the
again,
limit.
it depends on what you're cooking, but yeah, I enjoy it much more than some of the other.
Notice that that name brand is Granite Ware. Is that one that's available, say, on Amazon?
I believe that it is. This is a 3-liter pot.
Walmart is. I don't think
Walmart
it's
sometimes stacks it, but we have not seen it the last number of times that we've gone specifically to look.
What will a pot like that cost about?
Most $12 to $15. So when you do, some are asking about the prices, and we'll do this again. I printed this out from the website yesterday. The All-American Sun Oven is $349, and it is the cooker only. It does not include the pots or the accessories. If you want to buy accessories with it, which they have some racks for dehydrating, if you're interested in that, $399. Okay. This is the Sport, and it's $287, but it includes your 2 pots. It includes the oven thermometer and includes the water pasteurization indicator. We just decided early on, because pasteurizing water is such a critical need in developing countries, that we wanted to just automatically include a WAPI with every solar oven that we sold. You know, cost-wise to us, at that time it was $225 for a WAPI. You know, it's more now because they have done some nice enhancements with it. But we thought, you know, for $225 for a life that it saves, that's not that much money. You know, so we just decided to do that. Numbers of people who are manufacturing solar ovens also today, they include a WAPI with it. I suppose because we did, I don't know. We just did it because we knew it could be very beneficial. It can be beneficial if your city water gets polluted, for Pete's sake. You know, and that happens. That happens. Okay.
So even when you're doing bread or cake or whatever, it's with a lid on.
Yes.
And
You will be amazed how much more moist your cakes are.
yeah,
They're wonderfully moist.
you couldn't do like bacon or pancakes or.
You can. We saw a guy, he's on YouTube. I forget his name. Anyway, he sears his steaks in the Sport solar oven. And he has a griddle that fits the bottom of the solar oven, and he puts it in there and he heats it up until it's 300 degrees or whatever. And then he brings his steak out and he puts it on there, and you just hear it sizzle like crazy. Puts the lid on, lets it cook on one side for 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever, turns it over, lets it cook on that side, and he has a wonderful rare or medium rare steak. Pancakes could be done, it would be a long process just because of always opening it, closing it, turning, you know, you're putting your batter in, takes a little while, which cools it off. And then, yeah, it'll heat up and you'll see the little bubbles form and so forth. And then you can flip them over, and then in that process your oven is cooling off a little bit again. There's 2 things I have never done in a solar oven, and I haven't tried every type of cooking in the world. But I am convinced that 95+% of cooking done around the world can be done in a solar oven. Now, if you want wok type cooking, then you go to a parabolic design, okay? And you'll be able to do some wonderful, wok cooking. two things I have not done is I have not done a typical pie crust using lard or Crisco, type thing. I'm not convinced that it wouldn't work. It might work. I've tried it twice. The 2 times I tried it, I did not try it at midday when you start with a good hot oven. So it might work, but I would not do a berry pie with raw dough, because I don't think it's going to work. But do cobblers, that type of thing where you sprinkle a crust on the top, wonderful, absolutely superb. And the other thing I haven't done is I have not popped popcorn. And the other thing you're not going to do is you're not going to fry hamburgers, although having watched this guy do his steak in the sport, I know it could be done. You could. If you had the griddle that would fit the floor of the oven, it would do it.
So what do you do with the splatter then?
You've got more of a cleanup job. Let's eat. We can continue talking while eating. We'll be happy to answer questions. And then we'll come back and we'll talk more, and we'll cover the blending of seasonings and herbs for Mark.
You want different places?
So that's the first thing you take that out?
Yep. And notice how you just lean the lid against the solar oven. You do that so that the polyester film.
So you got yams or something.
Lift up the lid.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Check that out. Does it smell good?
So no liquid, that's just the juice from the chicken. That is only the juice from the chicken.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Take it into the kitchen then?
Yeah.
Take the lid off there, see what we got in here. Oh, another.
Have to get it just kind of straight up and down, and then it goes in.
That one there. There
cut
one
all
there in the
these
hole,
different-
in the corner. Yeah, there's one.
When we cut the foam, we have jigs that are
Pick it up?
HDPE plastic, high,
Goes in a hole, right?
a high density polyethylene. Okay? And we have a lid that comes down, and there's a track on the front for the blade, a pizza cutter, literally a pizza cutter, to roll in, and a track on the bottom so that the blade cuts through the 1 inch of thickness. Okay? And then you roll it in those tracks so that you are always getting the correct size and the correct angles if the piece was inserted correctly.
That's right.
And each one of them is inserted so that the beveled edge, you know, for the front and or for the bottoms of the sides go in first. So it's always the beveled edge goes in first. They are cut, you cut rectangles out of a big 4 by 8 foot sheet into smaller rectangles. And then out of one rectangle you get 2 floors. Out of another rectangle you get 2 squares that will make 2 sets of ends. And then the front is a longer, narrower one, and when you cut it in half, then you get 2 fronts out of it. And then when those, so we cut the big 4 by 8 foot sheets in corresponding, they're all cut for either ends, or for floors, or for fronts, okay? Or for backs. And then when those rectangles and or squares are completed, then they go to another set of jigs and they split it so that you get that beveled edge. And then that beveled edge goes into each of 5 different jigs that trim the back, trim the floor, trim the fronts, trim the ends. And so we were really, really blessed by these 3M engineers, believe me. They were just the happiest days of my adult working career was working with those guys. I learned so much from them. It was just an absolute delight.
Did they design and build the jigs for you?
Well, actually, the initial set of them, we had a neighbor that was a tool and die guy that was retired. And I went over to Louis one day and I said, Louis, I said, we've got this insulation, but I need to be able to cut these things at, you know, at angles. You know, any ideas you can give me? And he listened to what I was saying, and he was listening to what I was demonstrating. And at that point, I had like a piece of metal on the top that made the shape of one surface of the insulation. Okay? And I said, what I need is a track to run in the bottom and then hold the blade precisely against that edge and run it in the bottom track, and I could cut my angled cut. And so he made a first generation. But what we found out is that not everybody is gifted with quote unquote in construction or engineering skills, you know. And so then I talked to the guys from 3M and said, we need to do this, because Louis' health was really going downhill at that point, unfortunately. So I worked with Bob Nepper in his garage. John Roach was gone on a trip for like 4 or 5 months, and then he came back and he joined us. And so for a whole spring and summer and fall, we worked on creating the next generation of those jigs. And then we've done a little more fine tuning, but they're in essence the very same thing. And they have proven to work very well for us.
That is so neat.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Ah,
Very, very,
God's
very helpful.
provision.
Yeah, it is God's provision. That's
So
absolutely
they're
right.
basically hand cut, not machine die
Yes,
cut.
we strategically designed all of the steps of assembly and production, with the exception of the injection molding, so that it can be executed without dependence on electricity. Electricity is in developing countries, but it is not like it is in the US. And you will have electricity, and it might be on in your neighborhood 2 or 3 afternoons a week. Or maybe it's on 2 or 3 mornings, you know, a week. And it's just not there 24/7 like we know it. And So no matter where production happens, we can count on production being able to be carried forward because it doesn't require electricity. Just requires some people who enjoy working, and our philosophy is pay them a little bit better than what their other jobs would pay them. And you have people who want to do that, and you get good workers. And there's no reason, in our opinion, for them to pay for Americans to assemble them, because why should they pay for American labor when they don't earn American wages? You know.
Right.
Plus, they have great need for employment. We're bent out of shape if our employment levels are at 15%.
Yes.
Okay? And they're at 60, 70, 80%, 90% in some countries of unemployment. Other than maybe they go and sit on the street and say, yeah, I've got chiclets for sale, or pineapple for sale, and they walk around through the village trying to sell their pineapple that they've grown, and they don't actually grow it, they buy it from a grower, and maybe they buy 10 to sell for the day, and if they sell 10, that's a good day for them, because now they have money to give back. If they borrowed $10, at the end of the day, they have to pay back $11. So 10% interest per day is what they're doing. And if they don't sell all 10 of them, they still owe the $11.
Oh.
So it's a real challenge. Yeah. So right now, when we've been shipping to developing countries, what we've done is the injection molding is done here. We have cut the parts of the insulation and cut the parts of the insulation of the aluminum, and we have jigs that fold the aluminum also. And we can put parts for 25 ovens in one Gaylord. A Gaylord is a triple wall box that's 48 inches long by 40 inches wide by 36 inches deep. And they fit nice into a container, or they fit nice into a semi. And a lid goes over them, and you can strap them shut, and things remain intact. And if we ship them that way, we can ship 1,000 in a container. So if you're paying $10,000 to ship the container, that's $10 per stove. If you want to ship one solar oven to developing countries, we haven't been in it for 2 years, okay? But literally, DHL, FedEx, what's the brown truck? UPS. It literally costs $600 to $800 to ship one oven.
So ship a container.
So shipping by container is critical. And the number one thing that has held us back in developing countries is the mindset of the uppers within the UN, the World Bank, and so forth, that they need these efficient wood-burning stoves, which are not the cleanest stoves, and yet their alliance is the Clean Stove Alliance. They totally ignore the fact that there's nothing cleaner than solar. Or that we have not had, $150,000 at a crack to be able to ship 1,000, or on paper we've laid out another schematic of how we could load a container and build a second floor in it with 4 by 4 foot supports between 3 rows of housings that just get stacked like so in there, and every half inch you have another housing, and then have a false floor on top of it for the aluminum, the insulation, and stop at a certain point where you can have the heavy aluminum and the jigs to go in at the end of a container. So we're waiting for the day that the Lord opens those doors with some major funding. Every pilot project that we have done has gone over very well. People love them, they're excited, they love the food, they don't want to have to pay the big prices that they pay for firewood or charcoal or propane or electricity, or take time to go gather the wood. Most families in developing countries are harvesting and buying both. And realistically, out of the money that they save in having to buy fuel, even if they reduce it in half, they can pay for a solar oven in basically a year of time. And then they're home free. Then that money becomes cash flow that they didn't have in their budget previously. So there are a lot of hurdles to cross yet, but we're trusting God that He'll work out the right combinations.